Uh, I'm not going to mince words. You lied to us. Well, let me just ask you to answer my question. Has anyone from the White House contacted you about personnel decisions?
Generally speaking, we always discuss with the White House, OMB, during the budget process, how many personnel we need, who we need where.
Answer is yes.
For
Have
budgetary
you been
purposes
directed
and
to fire people, agents, because they participated in investigations of the president?
I don't receive directions to do that.
Has anyone
I make the
suggested
decisions.
it? Has anyone asked you to do it?
In January of this year, Kash Patel sat before the Senate Judiciary Committee for his confirmation hearing as director of the FBI. He made specific commitments. On the record, under oath, he told Senator Blumenthal directly, every FBI employee will be held to the absolute same standard. No one will be terminated for case assignments. All FBI employees will be protected against political retribution. 8 months later, 3 FBI agents with 60 combined years of distinguished service had sued him. Agents who rescued hostages, agents who dismantled drug cartels, agents who saved children from predators. All 3 alleged the same thing, that they were fired not for performance, but for political loyalty. And it was not just 3 agents saying it. The FBI Agents Association, a voluntary organization representing 14,000 members, 90% of all active FBI agents had released a public statement. It said Patel's actions distracted agents from their work, fostered fear that their case assignments could cost them their careers, and increased the risk of criminal and national security threats by undermining morale within the Bureau. These were his own employees, saying his performance was, in their words, unqualified and unfit. Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut had those commitments in front of him, and he had one question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Patel, thank you for being here today. You'll recall well in January at your confirmation hearing before this committee, I raised the prospect of politically motivated retaliation, and you promised me, as you did other members of this committee, quote, every FBI employee will be held to the absolute same standard and no one will be terminated for case assignments. You went on to tell me, quote, all FBI employees will be protected against political retribution. And you assured one of my colleagues that you would honor the internal review process of the FBI. I'm not going to mince words. You lied to us. In the short time that you've been FBI director, you've presided over a rash of retaliatory firings. 3 FBI agents have recently sued you. They are FBI agents with 60 years between them of distinguished service, rescuing hostages, saving kids from predators, dismantling drug cartels, and their allegations, their civil allegations, are a searing indictment of your tenure as FBI director. But it's not just those 3. The FBI Agents Association has said that your actions, quote, distract agents from their work, foster fear that their assignments could cost them their careers, either now or under the next administration, and increase the risk of criminal and national security threats by undermining unity and morale within the Bureau, end quote. This association, as you know, is voluntary. It represents 14,000 members, 90% of all the active agents. These are your employees saying that your performance has been unqualified and unfit. And there is mounting evidence that these retaliatory firings were the result of direction from the White House. There have been instances in the past history of the Bureau of political interference and political direction from the director's office, but not the kind of institutional interference that we're seeing from the White House right now. I'm going to ask you, has anyone from the White House contacted you about personnel decisions?
I completely disagree with your entire premise that I have lied or am misleading the FBI. If I were, the results that I announced today by the men and women of the FBI and the historic records we are doing to keep this country safe would not be possible. The men and women of the FBI are responding to our leadership and this administration's priorities. The only way people get terminated at the FBI is if they fail to meet the muster of the job and their duties, and that is where I will leave it. And you accusing me of lying is something I don't take lightly, but I'm not going to get into a tit for tat with you.
Well, let me just ask you to answer my question. Has anyone from the White House contacted you about personnel decisions?
Generally speaking, we always discuss with the White House, OMB, during the budget process, how many personnel we need, who we need where.
Answer is yes.
Brian Driscoll is the former acting director of the FBI that Blumenthal referenced. He had 20 years of distinguished service, Medal of Valor winner, special agent in charge of the Newark field office. He sued Patel last week, alleging in a court filing that Patel told him personally his job depended on the removal of agents who worked on cases against the president.
For budgetary
You've been
purposes
directed
and
to fire people, agents, because they participated in investigations of the president.
I don't receive directions to do that.
Has anyone
I make the
suggested
decisions.
it? Has anyone asked you to do it? The best information is, yes, you've taken suggestions and direction from the White House in firing qualified agents.
Any termination at the FBI was a decision that I made based on the evidence that I have as a director of the FBI, and it's my job, and I'm not going to shy away from it. And as you stated, those are allegations, and that is an ongoing litigation. So they'll have their day in court, so will we.
The allegations are not just in that lawsuit, Director Patel, and I think your testimony confirms that, in fact, you've taken direction from the White House in those retaliatory firings.
It literally does
not. Because you've acknowledged that, in fact, they have been in contact with you about personnel decisions.
The White House has been, do not put words in my mouth, we're on the record. The White House, like any administration, contacts its agencies on the budgeting process and where it needs personnel and where the mission priorities are. That always happens. If they didn't do that, they would be abdicating their responsibility to law enforcement. I will always work with my partners in the chain of command at the Department of Justice and the White House to ensure that this FBI is delivering the results we are delivering, to include the lowest murder rate in modern U.S. history, to include the most fentanyl seizures in modern U.S. history, to include the most lives saved and the most children found in modern U.S. history. That is a working FBI. That is not a failing FBI.
Let's move on to a related area. In White House discussions, have you been asked or directed by the White House or others to engage in a crackdown on political groups or organizations, nonprofits, after the murder of Charlie Kirk?
To direct at political organizations? No. I've been asked by my chain of command to properly root out criminal activity wherever it is in whatever investigation we are conducting, and that's what we're doing.
Have those distinctions about whom you're going to target been based on direction from the White House?
Nobody gives me a list on who to target. My targeting list is from the men and women at the FBI.
Have you talked about investigating certain groups, nonprofits, or foundations or institutions?
Whatever those investigations are, they're ongoing, and I'm not going to get into those.
Have you used polygraphs to determine loyalty of agents?
No.
Have you committed that you will respect the First Amendment rights of agents?
I have wildly committed to respecting the First Amendment rights of agents, but at the FBI, you have to balance your First Amendment rights with your mission.
Have you imposed any sort of loyalty test in the course of using polygraphs or in any of the other personnel decisions?
Polygraphs have been utilized at the FBI for decades. They will continue to be utilized in the fashion by the professionals that administer them.
Have you asked under the polygraph test about individuals' loyalty or about their voting records or any kind of past statements?
Just to make it abundantly clear, I don't tell the professionals how to conduct polygraphs or what questions to ask. They make those decisions. And I, as the director of the FBI, never ask anyone who they voted for.
Have you investigated donors to a political party simply because they are donors?
Simply based on that fact alone? No.
Here is what happened in that exchange. Senator Blumenthal asked a direct question. Has anyone from the White House contacted you about personnel decisions at the FBI? Patel answered yes. He said it himself, mid-sentence, while trying to distinguish between two kinds of White House contact. One is routine budget coordination. The other is direction on which agents to remove. He answered the first question. He never answered the second. That distinction matters. Every administration discusses personnel numbers with the White House. That is normal. That is not what Blumenthal was asking. Blumenthal was asking whether the White House told him which specific agents to fire. Those are two different things. Patel treated them as one answer. The deflection technique was immediate and familiar. When pressed, Patel cited the crime statistics. 23,000 arrests, 4,700 children found, 6,000 weapons seized. The numbers are real. They are also a deflection. Blumenthal did not ask about arrest rates. He asked about White House direction in personnel decisions. Patel answered a question about mission outcomes to avoid a question about chain of command. There is a second thing worth noting. The FBI Agents Association statement is not a political opposition document. It is the institutional voice of the people who work for Kash Patel, 14,000 members. 90% of active agents. These are not senators. These are not lawyers. These are the investigators and analysts who operate under him every day, saying publicly that his performance has been unqualified and unfit. And then there is the Driscoll lawsuit. Brian Driscoll did not allege political retribution in a press conference. He alleged it in a federal court filing under penalty of perjury. The specific allegation is that Patel told him personally his job depended on removing agents who worked on cases against the president. Patel was asked about that lawsuit 3 times today. 3 times he said he could not comment because it was ongoing litigation. That is his right. Ongoing litigation is a legitimate reason to decline. It is also worth observing what he did not say. He did not say the allegation was false. He did not say Driscoll was lying. When Senator Schiff asked him directly whether anyone making these allegations was lying, Patel said, and this is a quote, "Anyone can say whatever they want." That is not a denial. At his confirmation hearing, Patel looked at this committee and said, no one will be terminated for case assignments. He said it under oath. 8 months later, the man who ran the FBI's hostage rescue team, who earned a Medal of Valor rescuing an American citizen held by ISIS, was fired. Patel confirmed he personally delivered that termination. He said, "That is my job." The question Blumenthal asked was never answered. Whether the White House directed those specific firings, the answer is still open. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The hearing files covers the record, not just the talking points. You lied to us. That was the opening. He never closed it.